When Giulia Rossetti was first captured, she made a decision that would haunt her for years to come. She decided to keep her rank hidden. It was September of 1943. The war in Italy was falling apart like old brick in a storm. Mussolini had just been removed from power only months before. The Italian government had secretly signed a peace treaty with the Allies, but nobody had told the soldiers. Nobody had told the women who served their country. Giulia had been a lieutenant in the Italian army, a real officer, a woman who had earned her position through skill, intelligence, and sacrifice. In her country, this made her unusual. Many people mocked her. They said a woman had no place giving orders to men. They said her uniform was a joke, but Giulia had proven them wrong every single day. When the American soldiers came through the checkpoint near Naples, Giulia made a choice. She destroyed her officer's identification. She tore up her commission papers. She buried her rank insignia in the dirt. To the Americans, she would be just another soldier, just another enlisted woman, someone less important, someone who might be forgotten more easily. She thought this would protect her. She thought this would make things easier. She was wrong about both those things. The American soldiers who captured her unit showed no particular cruelty that first day. They were businesslike, professional, and tired. They had been fighting their way up the Italian peninsula for weeks. They did not care much about the prisoners they were taking. These were not ruthless killers. They were just soldiers doing a job. But the Italian soldiers in the camp did care. When Giulia and the other female prisoners arrived at the temporary holding area that night, she saw the looks on the faces of her fellow countrymen. The looks said everything. These women had surrendered. These women had been captured. This was a humiliation to Italy. This was a stain on the honor of the nation. One of the Italian officers, a major she recognized from another unit, actually spat on the ground as she walked past. He did not spit on her directly, but he spat close enough that she understood his message. "You are filthy," his actions said. "You are shameful. You do not deserve to be called a soldier." Giulia said nothing. She kept her face blank, but inside something hardened in her chest. There were 14 women in her group. Most of them were young, some barely more than girls. They had joined the military for different reasons. Some wanted to serve their country. Some needed the work. Some believed in the cause that Italy was fighting for before the cause collapsed into nothing. Giulia had joined because she loved precision, organization, and challenge. She had been a mathematics teacher before the war. She had studied strategy and military history since she was a girl. When the military finally opened positions to women, she had applied without hesitation. Her father had called her foolish. Her mother had wept, but Giulia had gone anyway. Now she stood in a dirty holding pen with 14 other women, and the knowledge that her country considered her a disgrace. The Americans processed them the next morning. The Americans had camps everywhere now. The Germans were retreating. Italy was falling. The American military was stretched thin, trying to manage an enormous number of prisoners, manage supplies, manage the chaos of a country in the middle of changing hands from one side to another. One of the American sergeants, a big man with kind eyes and a Boston accent so thick that Giulia could barely understand him, read off their names. He seemed to be checking them against a list. Every time he read a name, he made a mark with his pencil. When he got to Giulia's name, he looked up at her. He studied her face for a moment. She had dark hair, cut short for military service. She had sharp features. She had the kind of face that looked serious even when she was not thinking about anything serious. "You speak English?" the sergeant asked. Yes, Giulia said. Her English was good. She had studied it in school. She had practiced with textbooks and with other officers who knew the language. "I speak English some." "Some is better than nothing," the sergeant said. He made his mark. "You're going to Fort Benning, that's in Georgia. You ever been to America before?" Giulia shook her head. "Well, you're going to see it now," the sergeant said. He did not say this unkindly, but he also did not say it like it was something good. The train ride took 2 weeks. They were packed into railroad cars that smelled of metal and human bodies. The American soldiers guarding them were not cruel, but they were not kind either. They gave the prisoners food that was strange to Italian palates. Everything was canned or dried or processed. Nothing had flavor. Nothing reminded them of home. Giulia sat by a window when she could and watched America pass by. She saw cities that were clean and organized and full of lights. She saw towns so small that she could count the buildings. She saw fields that went on for hundreds of miles. Everything was so big here. The country was so vast, it made her feel small. The other women cried often during the journey. Some of them had husbands or fathers or brothers fighting in the war. They did not know if those men were alive or dead. Some of them had left children behind with relatives, not knowing when they would see them again. The uncertainty was its own kind of pain. Giulia did not cry. She had learned long ago that crying did not fix anything. Crying did not bring people home. Crying did not change the situation. Crying was something people did when they had given up. Giulia had not given up yet. When they finally arrived at Fort Benning, Georgia, in the middle of October, the weather was still warm but beginning to shift toward cold. The base was enormous. It stretched for miles in every direction. There were hundreds of buildings. There were thousands of soldiers and officers moving around with purpose. And there were so many German prisoners. They saw them everywhere. Whole compounds filled with German soldiers, all wearing the same uniforms, all looking the same. There were also Italian prisoners. Many, many Italian prisoners. The collapse of Italy had resulted in the capture of thousands and thousands of men. The women were taken to a separate compound. It was smaller than the men's compounds. It was also much cleaner. There was one main building where they would sleep and eat. There were smaller buildings for other purposes. Everything was organized on the American pattern. Everything followed American rules. The woman who met them at the gate was named Captain Helen Morris. She was in her early 40s, with gray-streaked red hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a uniform that had been pressed so carefully it looked like it had been made from stone. On her left arm, she wore the insignia of a woman officer in the United States Army. Giulia felt something stir inside her when she saw that insignia. Here was a woman, here was an American woman, and that woman held the rank of captain. That woman had authority over this entire compound. That woman had respect. Captain Morris looked at the 14 Italian women standing before her with an expression that was neither friendly nor hostile. It was evaluative. She was measuring them. She was calculating something about each of them. "Welcome to Fort Benning," Captain Morris said. Her voice was clipped and professional. "You are prisoners of war. You will be treated according to the Geneva Conventions. You will follow the rules of this camp. You will work during the day if you are assigned work. You will eat when you are told to eat. You will sleep when you are told to sleep. You will respect each other and respect the officers and soldiers of this base. Do you understand?" One of the younger women, a girl named Rosa who was only 19 years old, raised her hand like she was still in school. "What is it?" Captain Morris asked. "Please, ma'am, when will we go home?" Rosa asked. "When will the war end?" Captain Morris studied Rosa for a moment. When she answered, her voice was not unkind, but it was certain. "When the war ends," she said. "And I do not know when that will be. None of us do. For now you are here. This is where you will stay. You will make the best of it or you will make it difficult. The choice, I think, is yours." She turned to a sergeant who was standing beside her. "Show them to their barracks, get them uniforms, get them settled, and find out if any of them have medical issues. I want a report on my desk by this evening." As the women were led away, Giulia thought about what Captain Morris had said. "You will make the best of it or you will make it difficult. The choice is yours." That night in the barracks, after the lights had been turned off and the other women were mostly asleep, Giulia lay on her narrow military-issue cot and made a decision. She was done with hiding. She was done with shame. She was done with pretending to be someone she was not. Whatever happened in this camp, whatever challenges lay ahead, she would meet them with the strength that had always been inside her. She would show these Americans that an Italian woman could be brave. She would show them that she was more than a prisoner. She was a soldier. She did not know yet that the real test of her strength was about to begin. She did not know that the next morning would bring the first insult. She did not know that the kindness of the American camp would confuse her as much as it challenged her. But as she lay in that camp bed, listening to the sound of other women sleeping, listening to the sounds of an American military base continuing its work through the night, Giulia Rossetti made a promise to herself. She would survive, she would endure, and someday, somehow, she would make sure that people understood the truth about what had happened to her, the truth about her sacrifice, the truth about her strength. She did not know that this promise would take her on a journey that would change her life forever, but she made it anyway. Because that was what Giulia Rossetti did. She moved forward, she did not look back. She did not know it yet, but the women of Fort Benning were about to learn a lesson about Italian soldiers. They were about to learn that strength and honor could not be buried in the dirt, no matter how hard you tried to hide them. The first week at Fort Benning was a test of Giulia's ability to keep her emotions controlled. Everything about the American camp was strange to her. The food was different. The schedules were different. The way the Americans spoke to women was different. They treated the female prisoners like they were people, like they had minds that could think and voices that could speak. This was not how things worked in Italy, at least not in the Italy that Giulia knew. On the third day, Captain Morris assigned her to work in the camp office. This was unexpected. Giulia had not asked for it. She had not volunteered. Captain Morris had simply walked into the barracks one morning, pointed at Giulia, and said, "You, come with me." In the office, Giulia learned that Captain Morris knew about her English. Someone had told the captain that Giulia could speak English well enough to translate. "Can you?" Captain Morris asked. "Yes," Giulia said carefully. "I can do translation." "Good," Captain Morris said. "We have forms to fill out, we have letters to process, we have documents that need to be translated from Italian to English. I need someone I can trust to do this work. Can I trust you?" Giulia looked at the captain. She thought about the question. She thought about what trust meant. She thought about what the captain was really asking. "Yes," Giulia said, "you can trust me." Captain Morris nodded. "Then you start today. You'll have a desk over there. That sergeant, his name is Sergeant Williams. He'll show you what to do. And listen." The captain waited until Giulia looked her directly in the eyes. "Anyone gives you trouble about this work, about working here in the office, you come tell me. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," Giulia said. She did not know what kind of trouble the captain was expecting, but she understood the message. The captain had her back. The captain was putting herself on the line to give Giulia this job. The work itself was not difficult. The American military generated mountains of paperwork. Every prisoner had to be documented. Every assignment had to be written down. Every meal had to be counted. Every piece of clothing had to be tracked. It was the same kind of bureaucratic precision that Giulia loved. She worked carefully and accurately. She did not make mistakes. But there were other prisoners in the camp. Other Italian men who saw her working in the office. Other Italian men who saw her being treated differently. Other Italian men who, like so many of the men back home, thought that a woman who stepped outside her proper place deserved to be punished for it. One of them was a soldier named Corsini. He had been captured with a much larger group and had been at Fort Benning for several weeks before Giulia arrived. He had the kind of face that made you think he had been handsome once, before the war had added lines and hardness to it. He had also been an officer, though he hid this fact like Giulia had hidden hers. He moved through the camp like he was still in command, even though he was a prisoner. On the second week, Giulia was walking from the office back to the women's barracks when Corsini stepped into her path. "You work in the office now?" he said in Italian. His tone made it sound like an accusation. "Yes," Giulia said in Italian as well. She kept walking, trying to move around him. He moved with her, staying in her path. "You work for the Americans," he said. "You translate for them, you help them." "I do my work," Giulia said, "as I am ordered to do." "You disgrace our country," Corsini said. The words came out like a snake's hiss. "You work for the enemy. You collaborate with the Americans while Italian men suffer." Giulia stopped walking. She turned to face him directly. She was careful not to show anger, though anger was burning bright inside her chest. "I translate documents," she said quietly. "I do not tell the Americans anything that I should not tell them. I do not harm Italy. I harm nothing. I do my work because I am a prisoner, and that is what prisoners do. They work." "You are more than a prisoner," Corsini said. "You are a woman who should have had the modesty to hide herself away instead of working in an office with men. A woman who should be ashamed of her uniform and her pretenses." Something in Giulia's chest hardened. She had heard words like these before. She had heard them from her father, from other officers, from men who could not bear to see a woman step outside the role that they had decided for her. "I was an officer in the Italian army," she said quietly. The words came out before she had decided to say them. The secret spilled out like water breaking through a dam. "I held a real rank. I earned my position. I did not pretend to be a soldier. I was a soldier." She saw his face change. She saw the moment when he realized that he had underestimated her. She saw the moment when his anger shifted into something uglier. "You are a disgrace," he said. All of you are, and the Americans are fools if they treat women like men." He walked away, but Giulia knew this was not over. She knew that Corsini would tell others what she had said. She knew that more men would begin to look at her differently. She knew that she had made a mistake by revealing her true rank. But she also knew that she was tired of hiding. She was tired of pretending to be something she was not. That evening, when she returned to the barracks, 3 other Italian prisoners were waiting for her. They were all men who had been officers, men who had been captured and stripped of their rank, men who saw in Giulia something that threatened them. She was a woman who had refused to accept the limits they believed should be placed on her. "You have no right to an officer's rank," one of them said. His name was Mancini. He was thin and sharp-faced, with eyes that were too bright with anger. "No woman has that right. The military was wrong to give it to you." "The military gave me what I earned," Giulia said. "You earned nothing," another man said. "You took it. You stole it from men who deserved it more than you ever could." "I do not want to speak about this," Giulia said. She tried to move past them to get to her bunk. The barracks where the women slept was in a different building. These men should not even have been able to get to her. But the camp was not a prison. It was not designed to keep prisoners separated from each other. The Americans were not expecting prisoners to threaten other prisoners. But Corsini and his friends did threaten her. Not physically, not yet, but with words, with exclusion, with the weight of their anger. They started a campaign against her. They would gather where she could see them and talk about her loud enough for her to hear. They would make jokes about her pretending to be an officer. They would say things about women who had gotten above themselves. They would say things about what should happen to women like that. The other women in the camp noticed what was happening. Some of them started avoiding her, afraid that associating with Giulia would bring the men's anger down on them as well. Others were sympathetic but did not know what to do. A few, like Rosa, the young girl who had asked when they could go home, started to deliberately walk near Giulia, showing solidarity. But Giulia did not want the other women to suffer for her choices. She started eating her meals alone. She started spending more time in the office than in the barracks. She tried to make herself as invisible as possible, even though she had promised herself she would not hide anymore. It was on a cold Thursday evening, 3 weeks into her time at Fort Benning, that everything changed. Captain Morris came to the women's barracks after dinner. She called all 14 women together in the main hall. Her face was serious, but there was something else in her expression too. Something like determination. Something like she had made a decision and was prepared to live with the consequences. "I have been receiving complaints," Captain Morris said. She did not say complaints from whom, but everyone in the room knew. "I have been told that some of you are not being treated fairly, that some of you are being harassed by other prisoners." Giulia felt her stomach clench. She did not want to cause problems for the camp. She did not want to be the reason that additional friction developed between the Italian prisoners and the American command. "I want to be clear about something," Captain Morris continued. "I do not tolerate mistreatment of any prisoners in my compound. I do not care about rank. I do not care about gender. Every single person here is a prisoner of war and is entitled to be treated with basic dignity. Anyone who violates this will face consequences. Understood?" The women nodded. "Furthermore," Captain Morris said, "I am implementing new procedures. As of tomorrow, hot showers will be available for everyone, twice a week. Each person will be provided with soap and shampoo. This is not a luxury. This is part of maintaining health and preventing disease in the camp." She paused. She looked directly at Giulia. "And I want to see the officer in charge of work assignments," the captain said. "I want to talk to them about new positions. Positions that should be available to all of you, regardless of what others may think about whether women should hold them." The meeting ended, and the women filed out to their sleeping areas. But Giulia understood what had just happened. Captain Morris had found out about the harassment. Captain Morris was taking action, and Captain Morris was doing something remarkable. She was standing up for them. The next morning, the water was hot. Giulia had not had a hot shower in weeks. She had not had a real shower at all, not since before she was captured. The showers at Fort Benning were in a separate building with multiple stalls. The American military had clearly designed everything with efficiency in mind. One stall after another, with hot water that came out of the shower head in a beautiful, abundant stream. Giulia stood under that water and felt something break open inside her chest. She had been so focused on surviving that she had forgotten what it felt like to have something that felt like comfort. The hot water ran down her shoulders. The soap that Captain Morris had provided smelled like something clean and professional, not like the harsh lye soap they had been using before. The shampoo actually made her hair feel soft. When she looked in the mirror afterward, she barely recognized herself. Her hair was clean. Her skin was clean. For the first time since she had been captured, she looked like a human being instead of like a soldier who had been dragged through the war. But more than that, she felt seen. She felt like Captain Morris had looked at what was happening to her and had decided that it was not right. She felt like someone, for the first time in weeks, had cared enough to intervene. That evening, the other women gathered around her as she sat on her bunk after dinner. Rosa sat next to her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "What did you do?" Rosa asked. "What did you tell Captain Morris?" "I did not tell her anything," Giulia said. "I think she figured it out on her own." "Because of the men," Rosa said. It was not a question. "They were saying terrible things about you. Everyone knew. Everyone was hearing them." "Yes," Giulia said. "Why did you not hide?" Rosa asked. "Why did you not just pretend to be someone else, the way the men do?" Giulia thought about this question. She thought about the choice she had made in that holding area the first night when she had decided to hide her rank. She thought about how hiding had not protected her. Hiding had only made her feel smaller. "Because," Giulia said slowly, "I was tired of hiding." Rosa nodded like she understood, even though she was too young to really understand. She was too young to have lived enough to know what it meant to have to hide who you were. "Captain Morris is a good woman," Rosa said. "Yes," Giulia agreed. "I think she is." That night, Giulia wrote in a journal she had been keeping. She had kept a journal since before the war. She had kept it through her time as an officer in the military. She had kept it through her capture. She wrote in it in Italian, in a small, tight script that only she could read. She wrote about Captain Morris. She wrote about the hot shower. She wrote about the moment when she realized that someone had finally looked at her injustice and had decided to do something about it. She wrote, "I do not know where this war will lead. I do not know if Italy will win or if the Allies will win or if we will all simply continue fighting until there is no one left to fight. But I know that on this night in this American camp, a woman in uniform chose to help another woman in uniform. That matters. That is worth remembering. That is worth writing down so that someday someone will know that this happened." But the real test of her strength had not come yet. The real challenge had not yet revealed itself. Because Corsini and his men were not satisfied with Captain Morris's intervention. They saw it as interference. They saw it as the Americans taking sides, and they were planning their own response. 2 weeks after Captain Morris implemented her new policies, Giulia was working late in the office. It was already dark outside, and most of the soldiers and prisoners had already moved to their evening locations. The office had only a few people in it. Sergeant Williams was there, working on some supply reports. 2 American soldiers were filing documents, and Giulia was at her desk, translating a batch of letters that had come in from Italian prisoners who wanted to contact their families. The work was steady and meditative. She had developed a rhythm with it. She would read a letter in Italian, understand its meaning, and then translate it carefully into English. The letters were heartbreaking in their sameness. Everyone wanted to tell their family that they were alive. Everyone wanted to explain that they were being treated fairly. Everyone wanted to say things that would ease their family's worry, even though they were prisoners in a foreign country with no certain end date to their captivity. It was around 8 in the evening when Corsini came into the office. He was not supposed to be there. Prisoners did not usually enter the administrative building after dark. But there he was, walking in like he belonged there, looking around like he was surveying enemy territory. Sergeant Williams looked up from his desk. "Can I help you?" he asked. His hand instinctively moved away from his desk toward his side. "I need to speak to this woman," Corsini said, pointing at Giulia. His English was heavily accented but understandable. "I have a matter of importance." "You can bring it up during office hours," Sergeant Williams said. "Right now, this area is restricted." But before the sergeant could say anything more, 2 other men appeared in the doorway behind Corsini. They were Mancini and another man named Esposito. They looked angry and determined. Giulia stood up from her desk. She understood immediately that this was going to be a confrontation. "She is doing work that is beneath her," Corsini said loudly, his voice carrying through the office. "She is collaborating with the Americans. She is working to help them control Italian prisoners. This is a betrayal. This is not permitted. This is not your concern, Giulia said, speaking in Italian. She kept her voice level and calm even though her heart was racing. I do work that I am assigned to do, that is all. You are an officer of Italy, Corsini said. An officer does not work as a secretary for the enemy. An officer does not help the enemy control her own people. I am a prisoner of war, Giulia said. Prisoners work, this is how war works. No, Corsini said. His voice was rising now. This is not how war works. What is happening here is betrayal. What is happening here is a woman forgetting her place, and we have come to remind her. He started walking toward her desk. Mancini and Esposito followed behind him. Sergeant Williams stood up. One of the American soldiers moved toward the door, clearly intending to go get help. Giulia did something then that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. She stood up from her desk and she walked directly toward Corsini. She was smaller than him, physically weaker than him, but she had something that he did not have. She had the certainty of someone who knows that she is right. Stop, she said in Italian. The word came out like a command, like she was still an officer, giving orders and expecting them to be obeyed. Corsini stopped. Almost without thinking about it, he responded to the tone of her voice, to the authority that had never really left her, even when she had tried to hide it. You can call me a collaborator, Giulia said quietly so that only Corsini and the men with him could hear her. You can call me a traitor, you can say that I have betrayed Italy, but you cannot deny the truth. I hold an officer's commission. It is genuine. I earned it. I did not steal it, and nothing you say can take it away from me. She took a step closer to him. The Americans respect me, she said. Captain Morris treats me like I have value. She treats me like I have a mind and the ability to think and to make decisions. In Italy, that respect did not exist. In Italy, I was constantly reminded that I was a woman first and a soldier second. But here, I am a soldier, and I do my work with pride. Enough, Corsini said, but his voice had lost some of its force. No, Giulia said. Not enough. You want to know what my choice is? My choice is to continue doing this work. My choice is to earn wages so that I can save money to go back to Italy if I survive this war. My choice is to prove that women can do what men do just as well and just as professionally. If that makes you uncomfortable, then I am very sorry for you, but I will not change my path because of your discomfort. One of the American soldiers had returned with a sergeant and 2 more soldiers. They came into the office and immediately assessed the situation. Corsini and his men were still standing there, but they had not made any move to physically harm Giulia. They were just standing there, and she was standing in front of them, and everything was tense, but nothing had actually happened. Everybody out, the sergeant said, pointing at Corsini and the men with him. Now, back to your barracks. You are in violation of regulations being in this building at this hour. She is a traitor, Corsini said, but he was already backing up. I do not care, the sergeant said. Get out. Corsini left with Mancini and Esposito behind him. They moved slowly, reluctantly, like they were being driven out against their will. But they left. Sergeant Williams let out a long breath. You okay? He asked Giulia. Yes, Giulia said. She was not sure if this was true, but it was what she said. That took guts, the sergeant said. Standing up to them like that, most people would have just backed down. I have been backing down my whole life, Giulia said. I think I am finished with it. She went back to her desk and sat down. Her hands were shaking, but she picked up the letter she had been translating and continued with her work. Sergeant Williams watched her for a moment, then returned to his own desk. The American soldiers stayed in the office for another hour, making sure that there were no further disturbances. When they finally left, they posted one of their men outside the building as a guard. Word about the incident spread through the camp quickly. By the next morning, everyone knew what had happened. Giulia had stood up to Corsini. Giulia had refused to back down. Giulia had kept her dignity. The reaction among the Italian men was mixed. Some of them seemed to respect her more for it. Some of them seemed to be even angrier, but something had shifted. Giulia was no longer just a woman who was out of her place. She was a woman who was willing to fight for the place she had claimed. And something else happened, too. Captain Morris called Giulia into her office that afternoon. I heard what happened, the captain said. She gestured for Giulia to sit down. I want you to know that I am putting this incident in the official record. Corsini and his men violated regulations. They will face consequences. More importantly, I want you to know that what you did was courageous, and I want you to know that you have my full support." Giulia nodded. She was not sure what to say. "I'm going to offer you a choice," Captain Morris said. "You can continue to work in the office, and I will continue to provide you with the work you have been doing. Or, if you would prefer, you could take on more responsibility. I am creating a position for a liaison between the camp administration and the Italian prisoners, someone who can help bridge communication between the two sides, someone who understands Italian and English and who understands how both groups think." "I would like to do that," Giulia said immediately. "It will be harder," Captain Morris warned. "There are men in this camp who do not want to see you succeed. There are people who will see your position as threatening. You will face more challenges if you step into that role." "I understand," Giulia said. "Then you start next week," Captain Morris said. "And congratulations, Rossetti, you just got a promotion. You are now acting as a junior officer in my command. You will have quarters in the officers' section of the camp. You will eat in the officers' dining area. You will be treated as a member of the military staff, not as a prisoner. Is that acceptable to you?" Giulia felt tears start to form in her eyes. She had not cried in weeks. She had trained herself not to cry. But now, sitting in Captain Morris's office, understanding that someone believed in her enough to give her a real position, a real responsibility, the tears came. "Yes," she said, "that is more than acceptable, that is. I do not have words." "Then do not say words," Captain Morris said. "Just do your job well, that is all I ask." Over the next few weeks, Giulia settled into her new role. She moved to the officers' barracks. She gained access to areas of the camp that had been restricted to her before. She attended meetings where military decisions were made. She began to understand not just what the Americans were doing, but why they were doing it. The work was challenging. The Italian prisoners had many complaints. Some of them were legitimate, some of them were not. Giulia's job was to listen to the complaints, assess which ones had merit, and communicate them to Captain Morris and the other American officers in a way that they would understand. But there was also something else happening, something that Giulia only gradually became aware of. Captain Morris was teaching her. The captain was training her not just to do a job, but to be an officer. A real officer. The kind of officer that Italy had refused to let her become fully. Captain Morris would meet with her regularly and explain the reasoning behind decisions. She would ask Giulia what she thought should happen in certain situations. She would listen to Giulia's answers seriously, as if those answers actually mattered. One evening, about a month after Giulia had been promoted, she was walking with Captain Morris across the camp. They were conducting an inspection of the prisoner barracks to make sure that living conditions were being maintained properly. "I want to ask you something," Captain Morris said. "Why did you hide your rank when you were first captured?" Giulia considered the question. She had been thinking about this moment for a long time. She had been wondering if Captain Morris would ask this question and what she would say if she did. "I was afraid," Giulia said finally. "I was afraid that if I was an officer, I would be treated differently, that I would be separated from the other women, that I would be isolated." "And were you right?" Captain Morris asked. "Partly," Giulia said, "but not in the way I expected. I was isolated anyway, because people could sense that I was different. They could sense that I did not belong with them. Hiding did not change anything except that I was hiding as well as being isolated." "What would you have done differently?" Captain Morris asked. "If you could go back to that moment knowing what you know now?" "I would have told the truth," Giulia said. "I would have said that I was a lieutenant, that I had earned my rank. I would have accepted whatever consequences came from that, because hiding did not protect me. It only made me smaller." Captain Morris nodded like she had expected this answer. "There is something you should know," the captain said. "I had already found out about your rank. It was in the paperwork that we received when you were processed as a prisoner. I could see that your information had been altered. Someone had tried to hide your officer status." Giulia stopped walking. "You knew," she said. "I knew," Captain Morris said. "And I knew that you had done this to yourself. I did not know your reasons, but I suspected them. So I decided to wait. I decided to watch you. And I decided that if you showed me that you were someone who was worth investing in, someone who was strong enough to handle the responsibility, I would give you the chance to be who you really were." "And did I?" Giulia asked. "Did I show you that?" "Yes," Captain Morris said simply. "You did." They walked in silence for a while after that. Giulia was thinking about what Captain Morris had just told her. She was thinking about being known, about being seen, about having someone believe in you even when you do not believe in yourself. "What happens after the war?" Giulia asked. "What will I do? Where will I go?" "I do not know," Captain Morris said. "That depends on many things. It depends on what Italy becomes. It depends on what you want. But I can tell you this. Whatever you decide to do, I believe you will do it with strength and with integrity. I believe you will make a difference wherever you are. And if I can help you do that, I will." That night, Giulia wrote in her journal again. She wrote about the day she met Captain Morris. She wrote about standing up to Corsini. She wrote about being promoted. She wrote about discovering that someone had believed in her all along, even when she did not believe in herself. And she wrote something else, too. She wrote about the hot showers and the shampoo, about how a small thing like having warm water and clean soap had made her feel human again, about how dignity was not something that had to be earned. It was something that you simply deserved because you were a person, and anyone who tried to take it away was trying to take something that did not belong to them. But what Giulia did not know was that the story was not over. The war was not over, and there were people back in Italy who would eventually want to know what had happened to her. There were people who wanted to make sure that her story was forgotten. She did not know yet that she would have to fight a different kind of battle, not against Corsini and his men, but against history itself. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. Everyone in Fort Benning was celebrating. Giulia had been a prisoner for almost 2 years. She had watched the military base transform over that time. She had watched as American soldiers came and went, as some were sent to fight in Europe and others came back with wounds that would never heal properly. She had watched the German and Italian compounds grow and shrink depending on where battles were happening and how many prisoners were being captured. And she had watched Captain Morris work tirelessly to make sure that her prisoners were treated fairly, that they had food and medicine, that they were not mistreated or forgotten. When the war ended, there was joy and celebration, but there was also uncertainty. What would happen to the prisoners now? What would happen to people like Giulia, who had a rank and a job and responsibilities in the camp? What would happen to Italy? Giulia was in the office when Captain Morris came to find her. "We are going to be transitioning the camp," the captain said. "The prisoners will begin to be repatriated to their home countries. It is going to take time. Months, probably, but eventually everyone will go home." "Even me?" Giulia asked. "Even you," Captain Morris said. "You are a prisoner of war. The war is over. You have a right to go home, but Rossetti," the captain paused. "I want you to know that if you want to stay, if you want to remain here as a civilian worker, that can be arranged. I can help make that happen. You would not have to go back if you did not want to." Giulia thought about this offer. She thought about staying in America. She thought about continuing to work for Captain Morris. She thought about the life she had built here. But she also thought about Italy, about her family, about what waiting for her back home. "I need to think about it," Giulia said. "You have time," Captain Morris said. "It will take a while for all the repatriation to be processed." Over the next few weeks, the office received letters from all over. Letters from Italian families who had heard that their relatives were being released from captivity. Letters from Italian officials who wanted information about which prisoners were in the camp. Letters from newspapers and government agencies asking about conditions in the camp and how prisoners had been treated. Giulia helped translate all of these letters. She read about families that were being reunited. She read about the joy and relief that people felt knowing that their loved ones would be coming home. And then she received a letter addressed to her specifically. It was postmarked from Naples. It was in her father's handwriting. Giulia sat at her desk for a long time before she opened it. She was not sure what she wanted to find in that envelope. She was not sure if she was ready to hear from her father. When she finally opened it, she read, "My daughter, I have learned that you are alive. I have learned that you have been a prisoner of the Americans since 1943. I have learned many things about where you have been, but I have not heard from you directly. I am writing this letter not knowing if you will read it, not knowing if you are the same person who left our home before the war changed everything. I was wrong about many things. I was wrong to discourage you from your military service. I was wrong to tell you that a woman's place was in the home and not in uniform. I was wrong about many things, and I want you to know this before it is too late, before time has changed us so much that we cannot find our way back to each other. Your mother has been ill. She has been waiting for news of you every day, waiting to hear that you were alive. The news that you survived has given her back some of the strength she has lost. When you are released, I hope that you will come home. I hope that you will give your parents the chance to see that you are safe, that you have survived this terrible war. I hope that I will have the chance to tell you in person that I am sorry, that I was proud of you then, even if I did not say so, and that I am proud of you now. Your loving father. Giulia read this letter 3 times. By the 3rd time, she was crying, not the tears of someone who is broken, but the tears of someone who understands that she has been forgiven, that she has been seen, that she matters to the people who created her. She showed the letter to Captain Morris. The captain read it carefully, and then she looked at Giulia over her glasses. "You need to go home," Captain Morris said. It was not a question. "Yes," Giulia said, "I think I do." Over the next month, Giulia worked to help with the repatriation process. She helped translate documents. She helped process paperwork. She helped make sure that every prisoner who was leaving had the proper documentation, the proper records, the information that would help them get back into civilian life. And she said goodbye to the women she had lived with for nearly 2 years. Rosa, the young girl who had asked about going home on that first day at Fort Benning, was also being repatriated. She was going back to a small town south of Rome. Giulia promised to visit her after the war was truly over and travel became possible again. The other women hugged her. They cried. They told her that she had given them hope, that they had watched her stand up to the men who tried to diminish her, and they had understood that it was possible to be a woman and still be strong, that it was possible to refuse to be erased. On the day that Giulia was scheduled to leave, Captain Morris came to see her off. They stood outside the barracks where Giulia had first slept, almost 2 years earlier. "I want to give you something," Captain Morris said. She handed Giulia a box. Inside the box was a uniform, an American uniform, but it was tailored differently. It had insignia that indicated officer rank. "This is not official," Captain Morris said. "This is personal. I had it made for you so that you would have something that was truly yours, something that showed who you are and what you have accomplished." Giulia took the uniform carefully. "I cannot accept this," she said. "You can," Captain Morris said, "and you will, because someday, Giulia, the world is going to want to know what happened here. The world is going to want to know about the Italian women who were treated with dignity and respect instead of cruelty. The world is going to want to know about the women who refused to be erased. And when that day comes, I want you to have proof. I want you to have a record. I want you to have this uniform to show them that you were here, that you mattered, that you made a difference." Giulia hugged Captain Morris. She had not known until that moment how much she had come to care for this woman, how much Captain Morris had become like a mother to her, how much she would miss this place now that she knew she was leaving. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." "You earned it," Captain Morris said. "Every bit of it. You took what was given to you and you made it into something meaningful. That is all any of us can hope to do." The ship that carried Giulia back to Italy was crowded with prisoners and returning soldiers. She stood on the deck and watched America disappear behind her. She felt the weight of 2 years in her chest. She felt the weight of everything that had happened. When the ship pulled into the harbor in Naples, the city was both exactly as she remembered it and completely transformed. The buildings had scars from bombs. The streets were different. The people were thinner, worn down by years of war and hardship. Her father was waiting for her at the dock. He looked older than she remembered. His hair was white. His face was lined. But when he saw her, he smiled, and in that smile, she saw the man she had known before the war, the man who had loved her even when he did not understand her. He came and embraced her. He did not say anything. He just held her and she held him, and for a moment the war seemed very far away. But the war was not really far away, not yet. Because things had happened in Italy while Giulia was in America. Things had changed. The political landscape had shifted. Some people wanted to forget what had happened during the war. Some people wanted to erase the records. Some people wanted to pretend that things had never occurred the way they really did occur. And Giulia Rossetti, with her officer's commission and her experience in the American military and her status as a woman who had refused to be erased, was someone that certain powerful people would prefer to remain silent. Her troubles had not ended with the end of the war. They were, in fact, just beginning.